Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you and I thank Ms. Maloney for holding these hearings today. And I am very pleased to be here to discuss H.R. 1021, the Liberty Bell Act of 2001. Many studies have demonstrated that most Americans have little knowledge about the Constitution of the United States. While we all enjoy the benefits of our democracy, fewer and fewer citizens of this great country can cite the basic rights of freedom guaranteed in this timeless document. To remedy this unfortunate trend, a remarkable group of students at Liberty Middle School and Patrick Henry High School in Ashland, Virginia, have proposed a way to give Americans a daily civics lesson. On their behalf, I introduced the Liberty Bell Act of 2001. This legislation is intended to celebrate our Constitution as a living American symbol and integrate it into our lives on a daily basis by simply placing an abbreviated version of the Constitution on the reverse side of all U.S. paper currency. This bill would honor our system of law and government and promote the teaching of democratic principles around the world. We as a nation must be ever mindful of the ideals upon which the United States was founded, and this legislation would provide a prominent reminder of our founding fathers' vision for our nation. My distinguished predecessor, Congressman Tom Bliley, recognized the value of this concept and garnered over 100 co-sponsors of a similar bill during the 106th Congress, many who sit on this committee. This bipartisan bill was introduced in the 107th Congress with the co-sponsorship of the entire Virginia delegation, and support for the concept is growing. I also welcome the distinguished senator, my friend from Virginia, Senator George Allen, who is the author of similar legislation in the Senate. I'd also like to extend a welcome to members of the Hanover County School Board, the chairman, Sue Watson, as well as the chairman-elect, John Axel, who are both here from Hanover County, as well as Dr. Stuart Robinson, the superintendent of schools in Hanover. I would like to applaud Mr. Randy Wright, whose vision and leadership on this issue brought this concept to reality. Randy has been an energetic proponent of the Liberty Bill, and his hard work on this legislation has enabled his students to present their idea here in the House of Representatives as well as the White House. Randy has a true understanding of our democracy, and I commend him for his love of teaching. He is a model citizen, an enthusiastic teacher, and an excellent example for his profession. Randy is also joined by his colleague, Mr. Tony Santos, who is also a teacher at Liberty, as well as Patrick Henry. You will see from the presentation that follows that his students have excelled in their studies and promise a bright future for our country. They have traveled here today from Ashland, Virginia, to participate in our democratic process and present their idea to the subcommittee. I'm honored to represent such fine young men and women, and am impressed by their patriotism and inspired by their potential. As a representative from the seat once held by James Madison, I am particularly cognizant of the contributions of our ancestors at the birth of this nation. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, George Mason are not just names in a history book to these students from Liberty Middle School. They are shining examples of our democracy, and their memory embodies our heritage in Virginia and the United States. Men and women in this country and around the world are indebted to these patriotic Americans. We cherish their memory, and through this legislation, we work to preserve their accomplishments. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman Cantor. I want to thank you for bringing these students and teachers and community leaders and parents here. It really does speak volumes as to the outstanding people in your district, and it's really our honor for you to have brought them down here. Now, the distinguished senator from the state of Virginia, Senator Allen. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, Congressman Maloney. Thank you all and all the members of the committee for holding this hearing. And I agree with every single thing that my good friend Eric Cantor, Congressman Cantor, has said. He's an articulate, strong leader, shares the values that I think all of us understand are at the foundation of our country and carrying forward into the future. And I think Eric and I both agree, this is a very creative idea and a great way, an innovative way to help spread, not just amongst the few that study our Constitution and our system of government, about how our government's organized, the separate branches, the amendments, and so forth in the Constitution, not just folks who pay attention to it all the time, but indeed I think people would pick up one of these bills and they'd look on there and they'd see that, all right, the First Amendment protects freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to assemble peaceably, and the right to petition government. People may not know all of that. I guarantee you most people probably forget the idea of that the Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And you can imagine wisecracks about people, they're saying hanging around with you driving down the road is the Eighth Amendment violation. But nevertheless, it'd be a way that they'd learn about it. You also learn through it the history of this country, where you see the beginning amendments and certainly how the executive, judiciary, and legislative branches and the organization of the states, but they'll see how the full blossoming of the promise of this country was not all in the Bill of Rights, which unfortunately many people don't even know the first 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights and how they protect us. But then you see how over the years that the rights were finally given to those who were African Americans, how even later those rights to vote and participate in government were given to women, and how the Constitution, yes, it's our foundational document, but most importantly, it is not just our history and heritage, it is a living document that still applies. And when one thinks of how often money goes through our hands, this is a great way, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, to help encourage and help educate our citizenry today. And to the extent that American currency is put into circulation in various other countries, Panama, for example, uses the United States dollar or the United States currency as their currency. So it is something that I think is a great idea. It came from children, young adults, let's say, middle school students at Liberty Middle School, carried on by students at Patrick Henry High School, most appropriately, I think. And it is something that I think is just a great way to teach Americans about their government, their protected rights, spread our ideals around the world, educate Americans about the importance of this historic document, and remind us daily of the rights and prerogatives and protections we have, but also the responsibilities that we all have as American citizens. So I hope that you, Mr. Chairman, and members of this committee will be, I'm sure you will be as impressed and inspired by the wholesome presentation. I met and saw this presentation last February. I carried around a kind of now worn out in my speech folder, the smaller version. They have improved it for the 2001. This is a much better version, but than what you gave me. Of course, I wasn't elected yet. Once you get elected, you get better versions, I reckon. But nevertheless, I strongly support this legislation that will remind every American about our treasured heritage, the protections, the reason this government was created to protect our rights, our God-given rights, and returning the Constitution to where it belongs, figuratively and literally, in the hands of the American people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you very much, Senator Allen. And now, Congressman Cantor, are you going to introduce the students or bring them up?
Mr. Chairman and members, I present to you the students from Ashland, Virginia of Liberty Middle School and Patrick Henry High School in their presentation of the Liberty Dollar Bill Act.
Chairman King, Ranking Member Mrs. Maloney, and members of the Domestic Monetary Policy, Technology, and Economic Growth Subcommittee, thank you for conducting this important hearing today. It is truly an honor to be able to speak to you on behalf of the Liberty Bill Act, a bill before Congress to place an abbreviated version of the Constitution on the back of $1 bills or possibly other currency. We represent Liberty Middle School and Patrick Henry High School, where the Liberty Bill originated nearly 3.5 years ago. Yet we merely speak for the many students of our school, other middle schools, high schools, and now colleges that have joined our efforts. America's history and culture are full of examples of respect for our Constitution and our love of liberty. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address ends with,
"That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
In the movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Jefferson Smith says,
"Liberty is too precious a thing to be buried in books. People should hold it up in front of them every single day of their lives and say, 'I am free to think and to speak.' My ancestors couldn't. I can, and my children will. People ought to grow up remembering that."
Ancient Greece and Rome had forms of democracy, but these nations eventually fell apart, replaced by tyrannies and monarchies. For over 1,000 years, governments ruled over the peoples of all nations. But in 1215, a candle for freedom and liberty was lit when King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta, and people began to challenge the relationship between citizens and their governments. From 1690 to 1789, many more candles were lit for freedom and liberty, as the Enlightenment philosophers questioned further the relationship between people and government, eventually believing that government should answer to the people.
The Enlightenment philosophers produced mostly talk and writing, but in America, the talk became action. The Declaration of Independence stated that all men are created equal, that people have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that the government should come from the consent of the governed. We fought a war to win these rights and freedoms. In 1787, we illuminated the world when our founding fathers wrote what would become the model for all modern democracies, the Constitution. Our Constitution is a beacon of light for the world. The oppressed still stand up on occasion for freedom and liberty, as they did in China's Tiananmen Square. Shouldn't all people be able to hold up our U.S. currency as a symbol of freedom, of modern democracy, like a candle in darkness? Like a candle in darkness. Shouldn't the Constitution be on the back of the U.S. currency?
George Washington, President of the Constitutional Convention, James Madison, father of the Constitution, Ben Franklin, and many other great Americans met for 4 hot months in 1787 to ignite history's greatest light of government. They argued, fought, compromised, and gave their all to create a lasting democracy of liberty and freedom found in the preamble, the articles, and the amendments of our Constitution. They protected this philosophy and these ideals by separating the power of government into 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial, and creating checks and balances among these 3 branches of government. They further divided the government with divisions of power between the federal and state governments. While our currency celebrates some of the men who first wrote the Constitution, it doesn't celebrate their most noble achievement, the living document which they put their lives into. Shouldn't the greatest of American achievements be in the hands of all Americans to be preserved, protected, and defended? Shouldn't the Constitution be on the back of the U.S. currency?
A survey by the National Constitution Center, a body created by Congress in 1988, found that 75% of Americans say that the Constitution is important to them, makes them proud, and is relevant to their lives. However, the survey found that 94% of Americans don't even know all of the rights and freedoms found in the First Amendment, and 62% of Americans cannot name our 3 branches of government. 600,000 legal immigrants come to America each year. Many of these immigrants become American citizens through the naturalization process and must learn more about the Constitution than many natural-born citizens know. If America's most patriotic symbol, the Constitution, were on the back of U.S. currency, wouldn't we all know more about our government? And shouldn't we?
What is the cost of telling the world about representative democracy, about freedom, about equality? The National Automatic Merchandising Association, which opposes the Liberty Bill if it places the Constitution on the back of the $1 bill, says that it will cost $420 million to update the 4.2 million vending machines to recognize new bills. Sounds expensive? It isn't. The cost is only $100 per machine for 1 year. That is less than 30 cents per machine per day. That's right, 30 cents a day for 1 year. If it is too expensive to update vending machines, then the Constitution could go on other currency. As more people are exposed to these essential rights, more nations will turn to our form of government. Then they will also turn to our free market economy, opening additional markets for American businesses, which of course expands opportunities for trade and for income.
What is the cost of telling the world about representative democracy, about freedom, about equality? The United States Information Agency, which promotes our national interests abroad through educational programs and radio broadcasts, has a budget of over $500 million. Yes, $500 million to tell other peoples the ideals found in our Constitution. The Congressional Budget Office estimates the one-time cost of the design of the Liberty Bill to be $500,000. Could the $500 million yearly expense of the Information Agency be reduced if we let our $500 million Liberty Bill carry our message around the world? Could we cut back on programs and taxes if we let our money do the talking?
What is the cost of telling the world about representative democracy, about freedom, about equality? The Treasury Department's Financial Management Service reports that there are $558 billion of the United States currency in circulation. Of that, $7.4 billion are circulated in $1 bills. 2/3 of our currency is in circulation outside of the United States. Imagine the impact of 7.4 billion $1 bills exchanging hands over and over each week with the 6 billion people in the world. Each exchange being an opportunity to discuss and ignite a new or renewed passion for democracy. Once printed, the cost of exchanging the ideas of freedom, billions and billions of times each day, forever, is free.
What is the cost of telling the world about representative democracy, about freedom, about equality? The Center for Strategic and Budgeting Assessments estimates that the cost of the war in Kosovo for America was over $2 billion, and that the ongoing peacekeeping will cost as much as $3 billion a year. If the world were more aware and accepting of the religious freedoms we celebrate in our First Amendment, would there have ever been a war? If the government of Kosovo were challenged by a free press, would that government have been able to oppress its own people? If the Constitution were written on the back of U.S. currency, wouldn't it become the world's second constitution? And wouldn't there be less war?
You ask, what is the cost of telling the world about representative democracy, about freedom, about equality? The Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, World War I and World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Desert Storm, the war in Kosovo. These are the costs of the ideals we cherish found in our Constitution. Stand in front of any monument to our fallen heroes. Run your fingers across the names inscribed on the Vietnam War Memorial, or stand at the hallowed ground at Arlington National Cemetery. These are the real costs of the philosophy we love found in the Constitution. So, can anyone put a cost on mankind's highest achievements? Or are they priceless?
Perhaps with the exception of religious writings, the Constitution is the most important document ever written. The first 3 words say it all. We the people. It belongs to us. The Founding Fathers also wrote in the preamble of this great document the words, our posterity. They wrote the Constitution for the generations that would follow them. It belongs to us. With Article 7, the Founding Fathers required that ratification for our government come from the consent of the people. We, the people, gave our consent. It belongs to us. The Founding Fathers wrote in Article 5 the amendment process, knowing that future generations, their posterity, could alter the Constitution to meet the changing needs of the people, 27 times the Constitution has been changed by amendment. It belongs to us. We the people, posterity, ratification, amendments. The Constitution of the United States of America. Shouldn't it be in the hands of all Americans on the back of U.S. currency? Because it belongs to us.
The Constitution is all the more beautiful, all the more important, when you see the history and growth of our great nation as we matured and improved through the amendment process. The Constitution, unfinished, still being written, a living document for all Americans.
When the Constitution was first written, it was not written for African Americans. African Americans were not given equal rights in the Constitution, but the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments changed our nation. These amendments abolished slavery, defined citizenship, and guaranteed the right to vote regardless of race. The amendments on the back of our currency show a part of African American history, woven into the fabric of the Constitution, a living document for all Americans.
When the Constitution was written, women too were treated as inferior. They were not allowed full participation in our republic, but the 19th Amendment changed that. It said that women could vote. The 19th Amendment, on the back of United States currency, celebrates a part of women's history and the beauty of a nation of change found in our Constitution, a living document for all Americans.
Perhaps Barbara Jordan, while a member of the House of Representatives, said it best. We the people, it is a very eloquent beginning, but when that document was completed on the 17th of September in 1787, I was not included in that we the people. I felt somehow for many years that George Washington and Alexander Hamilton just left me out by mistake. But through the process of amendment, interpretation, and court decision, I have finally been included in we the people. My faith in the Constitution is whole. It is complete. It is total.
In 1998, the students of Liberty Middle School and Patrick Henry High School in Ashland, Virginia, first proposed that Congress adapt an abbreviated version of the entire Constitution to be in the back of United States currency. Congressman Tom Bliley and Senator John Warner agreed and introduced the Liberty Bill Act to the 105th and 106th Congresses. This year, Congressman Eric Cantor has presented, and Senator George Allen will soon present, the Liberty Bill Act to the 107th Congress. We just call it the Liberty Bill. While the results of this change will be many, we would like to tell you the 6 we think are most important.
First, the Liberty Bill ensures that Americans have a deeper knowledge of the framework of their government and a better awareness of where their liberty and freedom originate. Second, the Liberty Bill teaches the progress of American history as we amended the Constitution.
Perhaps that is why the Fleet Reserve Association said of the Liberty Bill, it should thrill all Americans.
Third, the Liberty Bill spreads the philosophy of representative democracy and the freedoms we cherish around the world, while saving millions and millions of dollars from federal programs. Fourth, the Liberty Bill will expand the American economy by encouraging nations to become republics and open their markets to global trade and global income.
Chairman King, maybe that's why the Wall Street Journal, who knows a little something about money, economics, and business, said that when members of the 106th Congress met with the students to listen to the Liberty Bill presentations, that it might have been their most glorious moment.
5. Los soldados alrededor del mundo podrán sostener la moneda corriente de los Estados Unidos y explicar por qué están dispuestos a dar sus vidas para las mismas ideales que llevan con ellos en sus bolsillos y sus corazones. And for those who don't speak Spanish, 5th, American soldiers around the world will be able to hold up United States currency and explain why they are willing to give their lives for the very ideals they carry with them in their pockets and in their hearts. When Lieutenant Shane Osborne and his crew gave the Chinese some American money as souvenirs, imagine the power and message of our currency if it had had our Constitution proudly and boldly written on it.
Ranking Member Mrs. Maloney, the Military Order of the Purple Heart simply said, we cherish this idea.
Sixth, the Liberty Bell celebrates the Constitution as an American symbol and ensures that we continue to preserve, as James Madison said, the hope of liberty throughout the world.
Members of the Domestic Monetary Policy, Technology, and Economic Growth Subcommittee, that must be what the Topeka Capital Journal meant when it said, the Liberty Bell may be the greatest idea ever originated in any school system.
Following the Constitutional Convention, Ben Franklin was asked what kind of government the Founding Fathers had given to the United States. He replied, a republic, if you can keep it. The Constitution on the back of our currency not only celebrates this great republic, it deepens people's knowledge and understanding of where our republic comes from, what it means, and it helps us keep it, as Dr. Franklin challenged.
And there are other reasons. The Liberty Bell promotes human rights around the world as people are exposed to Amendment 1, which protects freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right to assemble peaceably, and the right to petition government.
The Liberty Bell promotes human rights around the world as people are exposed to Amendments 4, 5, 6, 7, and 14 that ensure all people equal treatment and the same due process under the law, including fair, speedy and public trials, trials by jury, and the right to a lawyer.
The Liberty Bell promotes human rights around the world as people are exposed to Amendment 8 that forbids cruel and unusual punishments.
The Liberty Bell promotes human rights around the world as people are exposed to Amendment 13 that forbids slavery.
Thus, the Liberty Bell increases the acceptance of diversity and equality around the world as the Liberty Bell becomes the tangible symbol of human rights.
In the 106th Congress, over 100 representatives co-sponsored the Liberty Dollar Bill Act, including the Majority Leader, the Majority Whip, 8 committee chairmen, and 3 ranking members. It was one of only 5 bills in the House co-sponsored by both the House Speaker and the House Minority Leader. Now, in the 107th Congress, the Liberty Bill has been introduced by Congressman Eric Cantor. It currently has more than 24 co-sponsors. Congressman Cantor, thank you for sponsoring the Liberty Bill.
Our deep American philosophy is sometimes taken for granted in the everyday business of making laws. Yet no country can survive that forgets its philosophical bearings. The Constitution on the back of the 10, the 5, the 2, or hopefully the $1 bill, where it will be seen by the most people, will remind all the world of the freedoms and liberties of our American culture based in the Constitution, the ideological light that gives substance, value, and meaning to the laws by which we live.
Chairman King, Ranking Member Mrs. Maloney, and members of the Domestic Monetary Policy, Technology, and Economic Growth Subcommittee. We hope you will vote in favor of the Liberty Bell Act and send it to the House. Of course, we hope the vote is unanimous to send a clear, strong message to the world that we are proud of our Constitution and what it stands for. The peace and goodwill of the Constitution will cast a far greater light if all Americans and citizens of the world have it in hand so that it can be read and the philosophy of American freedom and democracy shared. We know there will be opposition. People will tell you reasons why the Liberty Bill should not pass and cannot be done. But we believe that those reasons are weak when compared to the reasons for why it should pass.
Many times we've been told to stop dreaming the impossible dream. Standing here today is proof that Congress does listen to the people not yet old enough to vote, people who have little influence and little money, yet you listened. We carry the impossible dream, and we are proud to stand here today with you, the most democratic body of government in the world, and say that yes, in America, the impossible dream is possible. Thank you for listening to us today. And now we present to you the Bill of Rights. Amendment 1.
Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right to assemble peaceably, right to petition. Amendment 2. Right to bear arms. Amendment 3. Do not have to quarter soldiers during peacetime. Amendment 4. No unreasonable searches and seizures. Amendment 5. Rights of the accused. Amendment 6. Right to a fair trial. Amendment 7. Right to a trial by jury in civil cases. Amendment 8. No cruel and unusual punishments. Amendment 9. Unenumerated rights go to the people. Amendment 10. Reserves all powers not given to the national government to the states. Written in 1787, ratified in 1788, the Constitution, a living document, took effect in 1789.